What if Pangea never broke apart? What if the world map you know is a lie? Not metaphorically, but literally. No jagged Atlantic Ocean cutting between the Americas and Europe. No Indian subcontinent colliding with Asia to give rise to the Himalayas. No Pacific stretching endlessly across half the globe. Instead, a single, colossal landmass spans from pole to pole, encircled by one endless ocean. This is not a glitch in geography class. This is a world where Pangea never broke apart. Picture it. New York is just a long overland journey away from London. You could drive from Cape Town to Moscow without ever seeing the sea. South America and Africa are neighbors, sharing rivers and wildlife. The Indian subcontinent never drifted into Asia. It remained comfortably nestled between Madagascar and Antarctica. Australia never floated off into isolation. It's just Southeast Pangea now. The Earth is a jigsaw puzzle that never came undone. In our timeline, about 200 million years ago, tectonic forces began pulling Earth's crust apart. Deep within the mantle, convection currents slowly shifted the Great Plates, splitting Pangea into the 7 continents we know today. But let's imagine those forces never formed. Maybe Earth's core cooled differently, slowing the churn of magma. Or maybe the lithosphere was thicker, less prone to splitting. In any case, the plates stayed locked, and so did the land. This world is dominated by one massive continent. Let's call it Pangea Prime. And it reshapes everything we thought we knew about climate, biology, and human history. The geography is extreme. With so much land stretched across latitudes, the interior regions are harsh. Cut off from oceanic moisture, the heart of Pangea is a mix of dry plains, vast deserts, and scorching summers. But around the coastlines? Rich biodiversity, fertile lands, and stable climates. There's only one ocean, Panthalassa, and that changes the nature of borders. In our world, oceans separate us. They define cultural divides, shape trade, and challenge migration. But in this world, the ocean is the outer edge, peripheral, not central. The core of civilization thrives on land, connected by rivers, mountain chains, and endless flatlands. No need for ships to reach new continents. No great age of exploration. No isolated evolution. Which begs the question, how would life evolve in this unified landscape? How would humans spread, mix, compete, and collaborate? Would societies become more homogeneous or more complex? What happens when ideas, diseases, and technologies flow freely across an unbroken expanse? To explore this alternate Earth, we'll need to step back into our own geological past and then veer off course. Because the story of Pangea Prime isn't just a tale of land and rock. It's a tale of climate and conflict, evolution and empire, unity and collapse. And it all begins with one simple question. What if the continents never drifted apart? In our timeline, the world we know was born through chaos. Around 200 million years ago, the vast supercontinent Pangea began to crack. Not because of some cosmic accident, but due to invisible forces deep beneath our feet. The Earth's mantle, an ocean of semi-molten rock, was alive, churning with heat. This slow, convective movement pulled the crust like a conveyor belt, breaking the planet's shell into massive tectonic plates. Over millions of years, those plates drifted apart, birthing the continents we recognize today. But what if that didn't happen? To understand our alternate world where Pangea never fragmented, we must first explore what we lost, or avoided, by keeping the continents united. Because the breakup of Pangea wasn't just a geological curiosity, it reshaped everything: climate, evolution, biodiversity, and eventually human civilization. When the plates split, new oceans formed. The Atlantic began as a small rift, but eventually widened into the Great Divide between the Americas and Europe-Africa. The Pacific, already vast, expanded further. India, once nestled against Madagascar, raced north and slammed into Asia, lifting the Himalayan mountains skyward. Australia drifted into isolation, creating an evolutionary island unlike any other. These separations had monumental consequences. Different ecosystems evolved in isolation. Marsupials thrived in Australia, where placental mammals couldn't reach. Birds and mammals diversified uniquely in South America. Even human evolution was shaped by continental drift. Africa's shifting landscape gave rise to hominins, and Eurasia became the stage for Neanderthals, Denisovans, and eventually Homo sapiens. Continental drift also shaped climate. Ocean currents swirled differently, carrying warm and cold waters across the globe. The Gulf Stream warmed Europe. The Pacific's shifting plates gave rise to monsoons and typhoons. Mountains and valleys, born from collisions, created microclimates and rain shadows. Without tectonic motion, Earth would have been geologically quieter, but biologically, culturally, and climatically poorer. And then there's civilization. Oceans didn't just separate people, they defined them. Geography created natural borders, isolating cultures and allowing distinct languages, technologies, and religions to emerge. The age of exploration was only possible because of oceans. Naval power became the cornerstone of empire. Trade, conquest, slavery, migration, all were driven by ships crossing vast waters. But in a world where Pangea stayed intact, those oceans never formed. Instead, imagine one massive landmass stretching from Arctic to Antarctic Circle, from east to west. No Americas across the sea. No need to sail to new worlds. Humanity, from its earliest days, could have spread by foot, horse, or wheel. Trade routes would form not on oceans, but on rivers and overland highways. The Silk Road wouldn't be a narrow corridor. It would be the norm. There would be no Old World and New World, no Columbus, no colonization as we know it, no transatlantic slave trade, no vast Atlantic empires. All peoples, from the first Homo sapiens onward, would have lived on one connected stage, interacting, trading, fighting, and intermingling without natural separation. Of course, not everything would be better. Diseases would spread faster. War might be more frequent. But the diversity of our world, cultural, biological, linguistic, might look completely different. Instead of isolated trees of culture, we might see one dense, tangled forest. And that's exactly what makes this thought experiment so compelling. Because if tectonic drift shaped our entire human story, then in this alternate world, where the continents never parted, everything, absolutely everything, would change. For centuries, humanity believed it had decoded the story of the Earth. We mapped tectonic plates, dated oceanic crust, tracked the drifting of continents across geological time. Everything fit neatly into place. Until it didn't. It began quietly, almost unnoticed. A team of marine geologists working off the western coast of Africa collected deep-sea samples of basalt. They expected a clear age gradient, the older rock closer to the continent, newer crust toward the mid-Atlantic ridge. But the readings came back uniform, strangely uniform, no signs of seafloor spreading, no mid-ocean ridge activity, just ancient basalt, identical in age and composition, across a vast stretch of seabed. At first, they chalked it up to error, faulty equipment, sampling mistake. But then it happened again, this time in the Pacific, and then in the Indian Ocean. Different teams, different labs, same bizarre result. The oceanic crust wasn't getting younger toward the center. It was the same age everywhere, as if it had never moved. The anomalies piled up. Seismic imaging satellites found symmetrical patterns in magnetic striping on the ocean floor, far too symmetrical and static to reflect any real tectonic divergence. Then came the real shock. Paleontologists studying migration patterns in ancient fossils found signs that land animals had moved directly between regions that, in our current map, are separated by oceans. Fossilized amphibians from Triassic South America turned up in what is now West Africa, with no evidence of island hopping. Their existence made no sense, unless there had never been an ocean between the continents. The scientific community erupted in confusion. Teams reanalyzed plate tectonic models, reran simulations, combed through rock strata, even reviewed satellite data from the last 50 years. The conclusion was inescapable and unthinkable. The continents had never drifted. Pangea had never broken apart. All modern maps were based on a fundamental error in understanding Earth's history. When the findings were published, the world's reaction was swift and chaotic. Textbooks were declared obsolete overnight. Science teachers faced angry classrooms filled with disbelieving students. Creationists seized the moment, claiming vindication. Flat earthers trended on social media, conflating tectonic denial with their own bizarre theories. Universities scrambled to revise geology curricula. The International Union of Geological Sciences called an emergency summit. NASA issued a press release simply titled, "We Were Wrong." Meanwhile, society was gripped by existential panic. If something this basic about the Earth had been misunderstood for centuries, what else had we gotten wrong? How fragile was our model of reality? Yet, amid the upheaval, some minds began to stir with wonder. The idea of a unified landmass, of Pangea Prime, was not just an error, but a new lens. It offered new possibilities, new theories. Anthropologists began to reinterpret human migration. Had Homo sapiens truly crossed the globe on land, never needing to build seafaring vessels? Was cultural diffusion more immediate, more entangled than we had ever imagined? Geneticists noted curious similarities in mitochondrial DNA between populations long thought to be separated by oceans. Linguists found shared roots in seemingly distant languages. Myths from disparate civilizations about sky gods, world floods, and cosmic trees were now re-examined as echoes of shared contact, not coincidence. A new field emerged, Pangean archaeology. It sought to reassemble not just the continent, but the timeline of humanity itself. But with every new discovery, another question loomed. If this planet had always been one massive landmass, and we had only just realized it, how much of our civilization was built on an illusion? The revelation that Pangea never broke apart didn't just rewrite textbooks, it sent shockwaves through every aspect of human life. Suddenly, the world as we knew it shifted beneath our feet, and people scrambled to adapt to this new, unexpected reality. The supercontinent, Pangea Prime, was no longer a relic of the distant past. It was the stage for our present and future. Economically, the consequences were immediate and profound. Trade networks that had been designed around the idea of oceans separating continents suddenly seemed outdated. Massive shipping lanes across the Atlantic and Pacific became redundant in a world where you could theoretically drive from New York to Paris. Companies scrambled to reimagine logistics. Railways and highways replaced shipping routes. Mega infrastructure projects, spanning deserts, mountains, and vast plains, became the new arteries of commerce. Port cities, once the crown jewels of global trade, began to lose their strategic importance. Coastal megacities like Singapore, Rotterdam, and Los Angeles had to rethink their roles as economic hubs. Meanwhile, inland regions previously seen as remote or inaccessible gained new attention. The vast expanses of Central Asia, the Sahara's edges, and the Amazon basin became crucial connectors in overland trade and communication networks. Socially, the revelation brought a mixture of excitement and unease. People began to rethink their identities, not as members of isolated nations on separate continents, but as inhabitants of a unified landmass. New languages and dialects emerged as populations mingled more freely. Cultural festivals celebrating continental unity sprang up, promoting ideas of shared heritage. Continental Day became an official holiday in many countries, marking humanity's newfound recognition of its connectedness. Yet beneath the enthusiasm, there were darker undercurrents. The sudden reconfiguration of geopolitical borders unsettled governments and citizens alike. Long-standing national rivalries found new expressions as boundaries blurred and historical disputes resurfaced with fresh intensity. surveillance and border security policies evolved rapidly, focusing on internal checkpoints rather than coastal defenses. Environmental adaptations became a race against time. The interior regions of Pangea Prime, cut off from oceanic moisture, faced severe challenges. Water shortages, desertification, and extreme temperature fluctuations put immense pressure on agriculture and human settlements. Scientists warned that without immediate intervention, large swaths of the continent's heartland could become uninhabitable. Yet, technology offered hope. Massive desalination plants sprung up near coastlines, and ambitious projects aimed to transport water inland via canals and pipelines. Renewable energy solutions, solar farms stretching across deserts, and vast wind turbines atop mountain ranges helped power these endeavors. Biotechnologists engineered drought-resistant crops, hoping to sustain food supplies in the harsher climates. On the cultural front, the flow of ideas, technologies, and even diseases accelerated dramatically. With no oceans to act as natural barriers, contagion spread rapidly. Governments coordinated international health responses like never before, sharing data and resources on an unprecedented scale. The global community found itself both vulnerable and united in ways never imagined. Amidst these changes, a new narrative began to emerge, a story not just of survival, but of adaptation and resilience. Humanity stood at a crossroads, confronted by the reality of a world that never broke apart, yet had never truly felt so fragile. This was a world where unity was both strength and challenge, where connection demanded responsibility, and where the future depended on how well we could navigate the vast, unbroken land beneath our feet. As humanity adjusted to life on the immense supercontinent of Pangea Prime, the initial wave of optimism began to give way to growing unease. Beneath the surface, both literally and figuratively, new challenges emerged that threatened to unravel the fragile balance this unified world had so recently embraced. One of the most pressing issues was the climate. The sheer scale of the supercontinent meant that vast inland areas were cut off from the ocean's moderating influence. Without the steady influx of moisture carried by sea breezes, the interior zones experienced extreme temperature swings. Blistering hot summers with scorching daytime heat, followed by winters so cold they tested the limits of human endurance. Droughts became frequent and severe, turning fertile plains into parched deserts. River systems that once nurtured civilizations dwindled, and ancient lakes evaporated into salty basins. The loss of arable land pushed populations towards the coasts and the remaining river valleys, concentrating people in megacities vulnerable to other threats. At the same time, the ocean, the vast panthalassa surrounding Pangea, began to behave unpredictably. The absence of multiple ocean basins and the corresponding currents altered global weather patterns dramatically. The great conveyor belts of ocean currents, responsible for distributing heat across the planet, slowed and fragmented. Monsoons weakened and rainfall became erratic. This destabilized the delicate balance of ecosystems worldwide. Coastal regions faced more intense storms, while some traditionally wet areas turned dry. Coral reefs, crucial to marine biodiversity, suffered from rising temperatures and acidification. Fisheries collapsed in certain zones, threatening food supplies for billions. The environmental changes also deepened geopolitical tensions. Water scarcity sparked conflicts over shared rivers and underground aquifers, with some regions militarizing watersheds once considered common resources. Nations struggled to manage the migration of climate refugees streaming from inhospitable inland zones to coastal cities. Politically, the dream of a unified continental community faltered. The absence of natural barriers intensified competition over scarce resources, and old rivalries flared anew. Borders became militarized once more, not to separate continents, but to control internal migration and resource access. Technological innovation raced to keep pace with these crises. Desalination plants multiplied along the coasts, and massive pipelines were engineered to carry fresh water deep inland. Geoengineering projects were proposed, including efforts to artificially stimulate rainfall or reflect sunlight to cool overheated regions. Yet such interventions carried unknown risks, sparking heated debates over ethics and environmental consequences. Socially, the disparities between rich coastal elites and struggling inland populations grew stark. Access to clean water, food, and energy became a marker of privilege. Protests and unrest erupted in megacities, demanding fairer distribution of resources and more sustainable policies. Meanwhile, the global community grappled with the psychological toll of living on a landmass so vast and interconnected, yet so vulnerable. People experienced a paradoxical mix of belonging and isolation, connected by shared land but separated by harsh environments and political divisions. Perhaps most concerning was the realization that the supercontinent's geological stability, the very reason it never split, was a double-edged sword. Without tectonic activity to recycle nutrients and create new landscapes, Earth's surface aged. Soils became less fertile, mountains eroded, and the biosphere's resilience waned. Scientists warned that this aging planet faced a tipping point. A single environmental shock, a volcanic eruption, a meteor strike, or an unforeseen climate event could cascade catastrophically through the fragile system. In this precarious balance, humanity's fate was no longer just a matter of survival, but of stewardship. The unity offered by Pangea Prime came with unprecedented responsibility and unprecedented risks. To grasp why Pangea never fragmented in this alternate Earth, we need to journey far beneath the surface, into the fiery heart of our planet. The story begins not with continents, but with the Earth's mantle and core, the engines driving tectonic activity. Our Earth is like a colossal, complex machine powered by heat. Deep inside, the core is a swirling ball of molten iron and nickel, generating immense heat and magnetic fields. This heat doesn't just sit idle. It rises through the mantle, a vast layer of viscous, slowly flowing rock between the core and the crust. This movement is called mantle convection, and it's the primary force behind plate tectonics. On our Earth, these convection currents create a conveyor belt effect. Hot mantle rock rises at mid-ocean ridges, pushing plates apart. Meanwhile, cooler, denser slabs of crust sink back into the mantle at subduction zones, recycling the Earth's surface. This constant churning reshapes continents, forms mountains, and drives earthquakes and volcanic activity. But in the world where Pangea never broke apart, this mantle convection was different, much weaker, slower, or perhaps more uniform. Without vigorous convection currents, the tectonic plates lacked the driving force to move. The lithosphere, Earth's rigid outer shell, remained locked as one massive unit. What could cause such a change? One theory lies in the cooling rate of the core. If the core cooled more rapidly early in Earth's history, the heat-driving mantle convection would have diminished sooner. Alternatively, the mantle's composition could be different, more viscous, resisting flow. Perhaps the radioactive elements that generate internal heat, uranium, thorium, potassium, were less abundant or unevenly distributed. This geological stability led to a planet without the familiar volcanic arcs, mountain ranges, or deep ocean trenches we know. Mountains like the Himalayas never rose because the Indian plate didn't slam into Asia. The Ring of Fire, a horseshoe of active volcanoes around the Pacific, was non-existent. Earthquakes became rare and minor, yet this stability came at a hidden cost. Mountains and volcanic eruptions are not just destructive forces, they are creators of diversity. The collision of plates forms varied landscapes, climates, and habitats. New minerals and nutrients are cycled into soils through erosion and volcanic ash, fueling ecosystems. Without this constant renewal, Earth's surface aged. Soils grew older and more weathered. Nutrients depleted. The land became less fertile over time. Without new crust being formed at spreading centers, the surface lacked young rock that supports rich biodiversity. Biologists studying this Pangea Prime world found that evolution favored generalist species, those that can survive in a wide range of environments. Without geographic isolation from drifting continents, speciation slowed. Isolated islands, like Madagascar or Australia, where unique species evolve, simply didn't exist as separate entities. Human populations themselves evolved under different pressures. The lack of physical separation meant gene flow was more continuous, leading to less genetic variation between groups. Cultural exchange accelerated, creating a more homogenized but deeply interconnected humanity. At the quantum scale, some scientists speculate that the lack of tectonic stirring affected Earth's magnetic field. The geodynamo, powered by core convection, may have been less turbulent, resulting in a steadier but weaker magnetic shield. This would have implications for radiation protection and atmosphere retention. This planet, geologically calm and stable, appeared peaceful, but it was a fragile peace. Without the fiery upheavals that shaped our Earth's landscapes, Pangea Prime's environment was aging, less dynamic, and vulnerable to disruption. Like a giant clock slowly running down, the lack of geological renewal meant that once stability was broken, consequences could be catastrophic. Understanding this delicate balance helps us appreciate why, even in this alternate world, change was inevitable. The science of stability revealed that holding the Earth together was both a blessing and a hidden ticking time bomb. For millions of years, Pangea Prime endured, a monolithic landmass locked in geological stillness. Its vast plains and endless coasts stretched under a sky unscarred by volcanic plumes or earthquakes. But beneath this calm, pressures were mounting, unseen and relentless. The fragile balance maintained by the planet's stagnant mantle began to crack, quite literally. Without the continuous recycling of tectonic plates, heat from the Earth's core accumulated, trapped beneath the thick, unyielding lithosphere. The pressure built slowly, squeezing rock formations like a wound tightening beneath unrelenting strain. Then, the inevitable happened. A colossal rupture tore through the supercontinent's interior, an event unlike anything seen in the history of Pangea Prime. This was not the slow drifting that shaped our Earth's continents, but a sudden, violent upheaval. Fault lines snapped, releasing pent-up energy in devastating earthquakes that rippled across thousands of miles. Cities once thought secure, built on stable ground, crumbled as the Earth convulsed. Megacities located far inland, once thriving centers of trade and culture, were leveled. Transport networks fractured, isolating regions and triggering chaos in supply chains that had come to depend on the continuous landmass. Volcanic activity, dormant for eons, awakened with a fury. Massive eruptions spewed ash and gases high into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight and plunging the world into a chilling volcanic winter. Crops failed across vast areas, and food shortages ignited social unrest. The environmental consequences were swift and severe. The fragile ecosystems of the interior, already strained by extreme climate, were devastated. Species adapted to the supercontinent's unique conditions vanished, unable to survive the sudden change. Coastal biodiversity, too, suffered as ash settled into the Panthalassa, disrupting marine life. Geopolitically, the rupture fractured unity. With roads severed and communication broken, regional factions emerged, vying for control over remaining resources. Governments struggled to maintain order amid rising panic and despair. In this moment, humanity faced its greatest trial. The illusion of stability shattered, revealing the vulnerability beneath. The supercontinent that had bound us together now threatened to tear us apart. Yet from this crucible, a new resilience emerged. Scientists, engineers, and leaders united to respond, innovating in the face of catastrophe. Emergency infrastructure was rebuilt, leveraging advanced technology to connect isolated regions via air and underground transit. At the social level, communities banded together, rediscovering the power of cooperation beyond borders. The rupture was not just a geological disaster, but a catalyst for reinvention, a reminder that even the most stable systems can falter, and survival depends on adaptation. The breaking point of Pangea Prime was a harsh lesson in humility. Stability, it seemed, was not permanence, but a delicate balance. easily upset by forces both natural and human. The cataclysmic rupture of Pangea Prime was more than a geological event. It was a turning point for humanity. In the wake of devastation, as the land shook and skies darkened, people faced a stark choice: succumb to despair or rise and reshape their world. The latter became a rallying cry that would define an era. Governments, once fragmented by regional interests, began forging unprecedented alliances. The Assembly of Pangea evolved into a true continental governance body, coordinating disaster relief, resource distribution, and scientific research. Borders blurred further, and the old concept of nation-states gave way to a new social contract based on cooperation and shared destiny. One of the most ambitious projects was the construction of the Continental Lifeline, a vast network of hyperloop tunnels and aerial transit systems designed to bypass fractured surface routes. This infrastructure connected distant regions, restoring commerce and communication at speeds previously unimaginable. No longer bound by geography, people could travel from the scorched interiors to coastal refuges in hours. As the environment transformed, so did human ingenuity. Cities adopted vertical farming and closed-loop ecosystems, reducing reliance on fragile agricultural lands. Desalination technology expanded inland, powered by renewable energy sources like solar arrays sprawling across deserts and wind farms crowning mountain ridges. But it wasn't just technology that evolved. Societal values shifted dramatically. The catastrophe sparked debates about ethics, sustainability, and the relationship between humans and their environment. Movements advocating for Earth stewardship gained momentum, urging a break from exploitative practices toward harmony with nature. Space colonization, once a dream of distant science fiction, gained renewed urgency. The instability of Earth's surface prompted ambitious plans for off-world settlements. International coalitions pooled resources to develop habitats on the Moon and Mars, viewing them as insurance policies for humanity's survival. Education systems embraced interdisciplinary learning, combining geology, ecology, technology, and ethics to prepare a generation capable of navigating complex challenges. Cultural expressions flourished, with art, music, and literature reflecting themes of resilience and unity amid adversity. Yet, challenges remained daunting. Climate extremes continued to test the limits of adaptation. Social inequalities, while addressed, persisted in new forms. The scars of rupture were not only physical, but psychological, as communities grappled with trauma and loss. Still, the collective determination to rebuild and reinvent forged a path forward. The rupture became a symbol, not just of destruction, but of renewal. In the face of a world that had held them tightly for millions of years and then suddenly let go, humanity learned to stand on its own feet, reaching higher and farther than before. This period marked the dawn of a new epoch, where survival depended on bold ideas, shared purpose, and the courage to reimagine what it means to be Earth's stewards. In the decades following the Great Rupture, humanity found itself not just rebuilding, but reimagining its place on Pangea Prime. The catastrophic upheaval that once threatened to tear civilization apart had, paradoxically, sown the seeds of a new world, one more interconnected, innovative, and aware of its fragile home. The physical landscape was transformed. The supercontinent, once a seamless expanse, now bore scars, massive rifts, and new mountain chains forming as tectonic forces, long dormant, began to stir anew. Yet this shifting Earth no longer confined human ambition. It inspired adaptation. Cities emerged from the ruins, blending nature and technology, forging habitats resilient to climate extremes and geological instability. Urban planners championed living cities, metropolises designed with ecosystems in mind. Buildings integrated vertical gardens and renewable energy sources, while smart infrastructure monitored environmental health in real time. These cities were not merely shelters, but dynamic, self-regulating systems that balanced human needs with planetary limits. On the social front, a profound shift occurred. The ancient divisions of nationality faded, replaced by a global consciousness rooted in shared history and common fate. Education emphasized empathy, critical thinking, and environmental stewardship, nurturing citizens equipped to face ongoing challenges with creativity and collaboration. Governance evolved into decentralized networks, combining local autonomy with continental cooperation. The Assembly of Pangea transformed into a web of councils and committees, blending democratic participation with technocratic expertise. Transparency and inclusivity became core values as people demanded accountability in managing resources and policies. Technology, too, soared to new heights. Advances in artificial intelligence and quantum computing enabled predictive modeling of natural disasters, climate change, and resource management, allowing preemptive actions that saved lives and ecosystems. Biotechnology revolutionized agriculture and medicine, tailoring solutions to diverse environments and populations. Space exploration, once a distant frontier, matured into a vital extension of human habitat. Lunar bases and Martian colonies flourished, interconnected with Earth via rapid transport and data networks. These off-world settlements served as test beds for sustainability and innovation, inspiring hope and unity. Culturally, humanity embraced a renaissance of expression and identity. Art, music, and literature reflected themes of resilience, transformation, and cosmic belonging. Diverse traditions mingled and evolved, celebrating both local heritage and planetary citizenship. Yet, the New World was not without challenges. Climate change persisted, demanding constant vigilance and adaptation. Social inequalities lingered, requiring ongoing commitment to justice and equity. The scars of the rupture remained, a reminder that Earth's forces were neither conquerable nor predictable. Ultimately, this future was one of balance, a delicate dance between humanity's aspirations and the planet's capacities. Pangea Prime, once a symbol of unyielding unity, had become a mosaic of renewal, complexity, and hope. As humanity looked beyond the horizon, it understood that survival was not a destination but a journey, an endless quest to live in harmony with a world forever changed. As we arrive at the close of this extraordinary journey, it's clear that imagining a world where Pangea never broke apart reveals profound truths about our own existence. The story of Pangea Prime is not just an alternate history. It's a mirror reflecting the delicate balance between nature's forces and human ambition, unity and diversity, stability and change. One of the deepest lessons from this thought experiment is the power and peril of connection. A single landmass means uninterrupted flow of ideas, cultures, genes, goods, and challenges. While this unity fosters cooperation and shared identity, it also exposes vulnerabilities. Diseases can spread unchecked, conflicts flare without natural barriers, and environmental stresses magnify across vast, unbroken landscapes. The slow, steady drift of continents in our reality created pockets of isolation, incubators of biodiversity and cultural uniqueness. Without such separations, life might have stagnated, lacking the diversity that drives resilience and innovation. This reminds us of the importance of balance between connection and separation, between integration and differentiation, in ecosystems and societies alike. Geologically, the stillness of Pangea Prime came at a cost. The lack of tectonic renewal meant aging soils, less fertile lands, and a biosphere vulnerable to sudden shocks. It highlights how Earth's violent processes, earthquakes, volcanoes, plate tectonics, while dangerous, are essential for long-term planetary health. They recycle nutrients, sculpt landscapes, and sustain life's diversity. On a human scale, the thought of a world without oceans challenges our concepts of exploration, identity, and culture. Our history, shaped by crossing seas and encountering the other, might have taken a different path, one perhaps more unified but less varied. It's a humbling reminder that geography shapes history in ways both visible and subtle. Finally, the crises faced by Pangea Prime, the rupture, climate extremes, social upheavals, echo challenges we face today on our drifting, divided Earth. They urge us to embrace resilience, innovation, and global cooperation. They remind us that stability is never guaranteed, but must be actively maintained through care for our planet and each other. As we close this chapter, one question lingers. What if we saw our world not as a fixed map, but as a dynamic, interconnected system where every piece matters? How would we act differently? What choices would we make? The story of Pangea Prime invites us to imagine not just what was or what could have been, but what might be if we recognize our shared journey on this blue planet and act with foresight and unity. In the end, whether continents drift or stay whole, the true frontier is the future we build together. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey through a world where the continents never parted. Exploring Pangea Prime isn't just a lesson in geology or history. It's a chance to rethink how Earth's forces have shaped life, culture, and our very existence. If there's one takeaway, it's this. Our planet is a dynamic, ever-changing system where balance is fragile, and connection can be both a blessing and a challenge. Whether the land is one vast supercontinent or many scattered islands, the story of humanity is one of adaptation, resilience, and hope. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe for more mind-bending what-if explorations. Share your thoughts below. What other alternate Earth scenarios fascinate you? Until next time, keep wondering, keep questioning, and keep exploring the amazing world around us.